Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and today I want to tell you all a story. This story is a very odd story. It's an introduction to a series that's going to be running over the next few weeks that will be like nothing you have heard in Discograffiti history and probably nothing you've ever heard. So I've always had a morbid fixation on dark cases in music history, and I had also hunted down Jim Gordon before behind bars and gotten to speak with him for a very short time, but this was a little different. Honestly, I'm not a fan of Big Lurch's music. It's effective, but I can't say that sitting down and listening to it for fun is something that I do. But the crime that he may have committed, or at least the crime that he was in prison for, was so heinous that I kind of became a little bit obsessed with it. And I finally decided back when I was working at 5 Ponds E-Liquid to send Antron a letter. And I informed him that I was a filmmaker and that I might be interested in telling his story. And he wound up sending a letter back. And then another and another. And I got to tell you, all of them were beautifully written. First of all, the penmanship was outstanding. I mean, he obviously took his time actually crafting these letters. And they were pretty intelligently written with all kinds of endless asides, lengthy letters. I mean, dozens and dozens of letters. And then the calls started coming. Sometimes, honestly, as many as several a day. And it would be during the workday. I would be able to take the calls because I did well at my job and I could kind of leave and come back at will. But there was definitely a time where if I had to assess objectively, I was talking to him maybe a little bit too much. And at some point, a level of trust had been built as I'd wanted our relationship to unfold organically without rushing a documentary into being. In the meantime, I had enlisted the services of a criminal defense attorney who'd agreed to work pro bono to attempt to crack the case back open and at least to give the man a fair shot at an appeal. So the documentary idea that I had had in mind would have been called Street Cred, the Big Lurch story. And the idea was to detail the tragic consequences of donning a mask that winds up fusing to its wearer's face and swallowing the person's identity whole. The movie was planned to kick off with a chronological overview of the commonly accepted facts of the case, at which point the contradictory evidence of the case would have been presented. The plan was to kick off production with a weekend visit to Mule Creek State Prison, which is where he was incarcerated at the time. I'm not sure if he's still there, and where I was granted permission to interview Big Lurch on camera 6 hours a day for 2 consecutive days. And from there, my plan was to track down all of the participants in the gruesome nightmare of the whole case. So, did he do it, or was he conveniently set up by Tanisha Isaias' boyfriend, who knew all too well that the second a jury heard Lurch's murderous rap lyrics, he wouldn't stand a chance at a fair trial? The answers are a total mystery to me, because no one has yet to be invited into Lurch's world. Not until me, anyway. So I started shopping the project around. I brought it to Vice, and for whatever reason, even though it was a total fit, Vice didn't bite. And honestly, if I'd put the requisite amount of work behind the project, I think I probably could have gotten it off the ground. But honestly, it was so dark, and I had just gotten married, and we were trying to have a kid, and I honestly was not completely convinced that this guy was innocent, and I didn't want to wind up pulling off what I saw as some kind of vague parallel to Errol Morris's Thin Blue Line and help to get Antron off if he wound up being actually guilty of the crime. So our relationship gradually wound down when it turned out that I was unable to do anything concrete for him, or probably more like unwilling and unable when it came right down to it, if I'm going to be honest. So a few years went by, and I started Discograffiti. Then, wouldn't you know it, the calls started up again. After a few years of pretty much total silence, he starts calling again. I don't answer at first, but he keeps calling. And finally, I asked him if he wanted to do an interview, and there was a lot of him asking me if I would send him amino acids and if I would pay him, and I don't pay guests, especially guests who are in prison, but I don't pay anybody. I've never paid anybody that I've interviewed on this show, and he finally said yes. And what you're going to hear over the next 3 weeks is the result of that occasion, which is an edited together compilation of a series of phone calls that were split up because you're only given a certain amount of time on a prison call in case you've never had the pleasure. And these calls were taped over the course of a single afternoon. All right? So this is going to be unlike anything you've ever heard before. I guarantee you 3 solid weeks of what the fuck did I just listen to? All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.